to the 9/11 War Room, a weekly roundtable discussion that takes place every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in at 911warroom.com.
Well, unfortunately, I forgot to hit record on the last week's 9/11 War Room. I don't think I've ever done that before in the 4+ years that we've been doing this, but it happened. And it's really unfortunate because we were visited by Kevin from the web development team, and they are going to be launching next week with the 9/11 files. And also Mick Harrison joined us for a lengthy Q&A session. It went 3 hours and 45 minutes, 2 hours, 45 minutes. And, but fortunately, thanks to Karl Golovin, thank you, Karl, he supplied audio. So I will play that audio. There won't be any video to go along with it, but at least we have something. It starts off just as Kevin was getting started, so you'll miss the very beginning and the intro to the War Room, but it's there, and the Q&A is all there as well. What I was going to do is just go through this past week's 9/11 news, because it was rather short, and I think it would be better than just seeing it in audio form or hearing it in audio form. So let's do that. Episode 226, March 15th, 2026. Again, journalist from the International Center for 9/11 Justice, journalist Ian Carroll sets sights on tackling 9/11 with new AI tool and upcoming series, which Kevin will talk about in the audio file here soon. You can get to it at theweb.io. It should be launching next week sometime, so keep your eye on that. Also in the news, the Tehran warns of 9/11 style false flag plot. Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, said he had heard of an alleged plot to stage an attack similar to September 11th and falsely blame it on Iran. Here is the X post where he actually said it. It's transcribed. I've heard that the remaining members of Epstein's network have devised a conspiracy to create an incident similar to 9/11 and blame Iran for it. Iran fundamentally opposes such terrorist schemes and has no war with the American people. So not only did Iran publish this news article, but also Turkey did, and India did, and I think 3 different publications covered this story. And even the United Kingdom, and they have the Middle East Monitor. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Palestine Chronicle covered it. And then the Middle East Monitor, which is a UK news agency, they also covered it. But what did the United States have to say? They had a drone expert come visit and explain his views on what's going to happen on this attack from Iran. It's amazing how the propaganda works. Let's just let's play it. Here we go.
All right, Brett Belakovich is the founder of PowerHouses and a drone expert, as well as a Fox News contributor. Thank you for being here. What do you think about this warning about possible drone attacks? It does have people a little worried that maybe something like this could happen on our shores.
Yeah, well, I think the recent warning from the FBI proves that the threats of drone attacks here on U.S. soil aren't just hypothetical anymore. Someone out there had real intelligence information that this was a threat. Otherwise, the FBI wouldn't have issued the statement. And I've been talking about it for years on your program, but maybe this is finally the wake-up call that others need. It demands national attention. Protecting Americans, protecting our airspace and critical infrastructure from drone strikes has to be treated as a national priority. And we can't have government bureaucracy get in the way of that, because the tactics our enemy is using right now against our troops overseas are exactly the type of tactics they could employ against us in the United States if given the opportunity. Drones are cheap. They're easy to acquire. They're increasingly lethal. They're no longer reserved for nation states with trillion-dollar defense budgets. We are in a drone and counter-drone arms race with our enemies, and we can't afford to lose that race. And it's not that we have a technology problem here. We have brilliant engineers in the U.S. who know how to solve it. I think we have a decades-old federal contracting problem. And thank God for our president and leaders like Secretary Hegseth who are slowly fixing that. But the bureaucracy still exists in a lot of ways that stops counter-drone technology from being implemented at scale and creating this protection layer across the U.S. We just can't afford to have legacy bureaucrats running our domestic counter drone defense when we have real asymmetric threats to defend from. And I'm talking about the guys who've been doing this for years. They're part of the problem. They failed us. They're not moving at the speed of war, and we are at war.
Brett, obviously, this is alarming. Let me ask you a question. It might sound stupid, but let's say off the coast of California, if something like this were to happen, does the drone come from out in the water, or is that something that would actually been smuggled into the United States?
I think both are possibilities. You'd be surprised how easy it is for an actor to come in clean and wreak havoc and purchase something off the shelf with just a little bit of knowledge. But obviously, we struck one of Iran's drone boats off the coast in the Middle East. So they clearly have the technology to launch drones off of those boats. They don't have to physically be there. And that's just the reality. I don't want another 9/11 here. And from what I'm seeing with the rapid pace of drone warfare, someone can create a 9/11 just without the martyrs this time. We're seeing the future of warfare play out in real time across the Middle East. And the good news is the United States, we have the technology to stop this, right? What we need now is this urgency to deploy those capabilities more broadly because the threat's evolving fast. We need agencies like the FAA to understand this is a real threat, get out of other government agencies' way who are trying to actually implement this. We need to fix this with major disruption. I think the FAA, frankly, and national security policies on drones need to prevent the attack left of launch, not react after someone dies. They've sort of they're built for a world of commercial airliners and hobby drones, not a world where hostile actors can weaponize unmanned aircraft. And the threat landscape has changed, and we need a bureaucracy that can keep up.
Brett, I feel the urgency, and I now share it with you, just so everybody knows. He has an op-ed up on.
Yeah. Brett wants the bureaucracy to get out of the way. He wants all the checks and balances to be removed. Let's just keep giving up more and more. Yeah. Sorry, Brett. That's not checking with me. Also in the news, U.S. Bank Tower. It's been going viral lately because everyone's thinking, oh, Larry Silverstein just bought this. But he actually purchased it in 2020. Let's read a little story here. Silverstein Properties secures full floor lease with Wilson Elser at U.S. Bank Towers in Los Angeles. Silverstein Properties, a leading real estate investment, development, and management firm, today announced, that's March 2nd, a new 24,000 square foot lease with Wilson Elser at U.S. Bank Tower, its premier 72-story office tower in downtown L.A. As part of a 10-year lease, Wilson Elser will occupy the entire 31st floor of the U.S. Bank Tower. U.S. Bank Tower is home to many of the world's leading financial firms, insurance companies, and law firms. Notable tenants include Marsh & McLennan. Some of you know why that's significant, because Marsh & McLennan was also a tenant in World Trade Center 1. I looked, but no, there is no Cantor Fitzgerald. I guess Howard Lutnick did not get office space in this one. Silverstein Properties purchased U.S. Bank Tower in 2020 and completed a wide-ranging capital improvement program to expand amenity offerings, redesign the arrival experience, and upgrade elevators. If you work in this tower, I would work remotely. If a large portion of your workforce doesn't show up, I would leave. Who knows? But it's interesting. Also in the news, we talked about Boat Lift 9/11, a film coming out, and it's premiering this September. It's about, and I'll read it right here. Inspired by Saved by the Seawall by Jessica Dulong, Boat Lift 9/11 tells the remarkable true story of the spontaneous evacuation that unfolded on New York's waterways in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks. As Lower Manhattan was cut off from traditional evacuation routes, an impromptu fleet of ferries, tugboats, fishing vessels, and private boats mobilized to transport hundreds of thousands of stranded people across the New York harbor to safety. So check that out. They'll be doing some screenings a little bit earlier, but the premiere is going to be this September. Also in 9/11 news, Boston 9/11 Truth will be hosting an interview with Jonathan Mark Haber. He wrote the book In Plain Sight, a memoir infused with military psychological operations. He's also the founder of Flyby News. Check that out. It won't be again, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, April 2nd, 6:30 p.m. You can get an invitation by emailing Sueserpa, SUESERPA @gmail.com. Also, we have Richard Gage 9/11, AE 9/11 Truth DVD in your wallet. We covered it last week, but I just want to reiterate it. Carry your Calling Out Bravo 7 documentary in your wallet. Credit card sized digital USB media flash card. It's pretty cool. Very nice way, eye-catching way to get somebody's attention. It has the entire movie documentary on it. It has a USB drive you could just plug right into the computer, or you can get a little adapter and plug it into your phone. Again, check that out. Calling Out Bravo 7, one of the best World Trade Center 7 documentaries I've ever seen. But Richard does have a plan to put all of their documentaries, Experts Speak Out, and Blueprint for Truth, as well as many others. So keep your eye out for that. Also, Crime Scene to Courtroom. I just want to reiterate this again. 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, 911c2c.org. All 5 episodes are currently up on the website. You can check it out. If you haven't seen them, please do. They're really good. And Richard is working on episode 6 as we speak. It doesn't look like he's going to get out in March like he wanted to, but it's coming soon. And lastly, our own Joshua Schoenfeld had pointed out this article in Covert Action magazine. Whistleblower was ignored after he provided information about 9/11 attacks to CIA. I haven't read the article. It's by Jeremy Kuzmarov. Again, he had put it in the chat, and I just figured I'll mention it since I'm doing this small little rehash of what the news was. Check that out. Again, everything, all of these news items will be linked in the description at Rumble and also YouTube. Just go there and you'll see it. And again, the rest of the show is just going to be the audio recording of last week's War Room because I made a rookie mistake and forgot to hit record. Anyways, thank you guys. We'll see you next Sunday.
Understand or really don't understand AI. There's a lot of problems with AI. Hallucination, just making things up, right? So what we did was we created an AI system that is really, it's in one place, right? So whether it's running locally on your computer or whatever. And what it's not doing is, if there's like a gap in information, it's not filling in the gap, right? If it doesn't have information in that gap, it tells you that. And if it makes a claim, then it has to back up that claim with source documents. Okay, so you so a data set. When I heard earlier, somebody was asking like, what is a data set? And a data set is really just a very large set of documents, and those documents could be PDF, they could be video, audio. I mean, it could be a number of different things, but they're files, right? And then so we have large data sets. Now, when you're going through large data sets, say it's the 100 and let me look at the actual number here, 175.4 thousand pages, right, of individual files that, you know, Gene, Sandra, and all these people in the group have given to us so far, or the 3.5 million pages of documents in the Epstein files. What you'll find is that if you were to independently go in and try to read all them and then put them all into context, could take one person a lifetime, could take a team of people a year, just to read it all, just to get context before you even put the context of all of the context together, right? And so what we're doing is we're speeding up that process. Think of it like a research team under your direction, Now you have a question. You can ask the system a question, and then it will search just the documents, right? So it's not going to the internet, pulling articles, pulling misinformation, none of that. It's pulling direct from the document source, and then it says, well, this is what the context of the document sets have. Now, what's also interesting is, using the example of Epstein and the 9/11, they're two separate data sets. Well, you can now put two or more data sets into what we call a canvas. And a canvas is basically a workspace where you can put in data sets and then start asking questions based on all of the data that's there across multiple data sets. Excuse me?
Oh, good. I'll just mute them. You're good.
Oh, okay. So that's what a data set is. A data set is basically a large collection of files. Let's say it's on a topic, right? So right now what we have here, we're going to launch this week, and we have 3 data sets right now. We have the FBI Vault, we have the 9/11 FOIA and government records, which these lovely people have given us, and we have the Epstein files. We have all the Epstein files that the DOJ has released. Now, this is a full investigative tool in the sense that not only you're able to parse through the data sets and ask questions, you're also able to, like I said, we have a canvas. So what you can do is you can start dragging these documents and then putting whips between them, right? Strings, like an evidence board, right? Like a detective would have. And now you can start linking all of these things together however you want. Right? Because everybody here is trying to figure something out. If you're using our system, it's because you're trying to put pieces together, connect dots, right? And so now you're able to take these documents, take these reports that it gives you, and start putting those onto boards and then linking things together. And you start doing that over time, and next thing you know, you're building out a real report here. You're building out a real investigation. So this is an investigative tool by investigators, or OSINT, open source intelligence investigators, for all of us to use, right? And so maybe you're somebody who is very deeply in this type of world. This is the type of work you've been doing. A lot of you have been doing this for 24 years, right? Some people are just kind of getting into this now. They're sort of waking up to hey, maybe the narrative isn't right. I want to investigate this myself because I don't trust what people are telling me. Whatever side of that spectrum you are, or wherever in that spectrum you are, this is a useful tool for you. So, and then now what we're also offering is the ability to put in your own data. So if you want to upload your own data sets, right? So say some of you, we don't have the 9/11 files that you have. You want to get those into the context engine to start to understand things in context to all the other 9/11 documents we have, or maybe the Epstein files or whatever. Now you can start uploading your own document sets in here, and then it does all the magic to get all of that into the brain of your canvas so that you can start really understanding the fuller context of things. So what we did was we actually did a 3-week beta test where we had 60,000 people come in. Please. Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I'm muted. You're good.
No worries. So what we did is we did about 3 weeks where we had 60,000 people come in and start using it. And all we had in there was the Epstein files, but that's a thing that people care about. So we had 60,000 people utilize it. That's what we call beta testing. And in beta testing, we get a lot of information, a lot of feedback, and we're constantly tweaking things through the beta test phase. We shut down beta about a week ago, and we are implementing all of these different features that were suggested to us, and it's working. We're probably going to test it internally and with a few people over the next few days, and then hopefully this week we come full market. Oh, absolutely, yeah. So that I could share my screen if you guys kind of want to see a little bit of it. Yeah. Okay, so I have to set.
Yep. Let me say allow. Very good.
Perfect. Now let me choose. Okay. So you guys see my screen here?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. I rarely use Zoom, so I'm like, where is that thing? All right. And so, yeah, so right here, this is our main dashboard. You can see these are my investigations or my canvases. I have 9/11 and Epstein. I have just straight 9/11, and I have Epstein files. These are our public data sets. You can, like I said, upload your own data sets. Those would be in private, so you can have your own private data sets that are only to you. And we're also very soon going to have a functionality where you could actually have like one of these canvases, one of these investigations with multiple people that you could share. So you can share information and do investigations together. That is another popular feature that people have requested during beta test. So, let's kind of go in here, and this here was just, I just kind of ran, a quick test, and this was 9/11. This was yesterday when I finally got my access into here, right? And so what I did was I said, hey, tell me a timeline of the day, right? Now it shows you the logic and how it's coming to the questions, right? So it's not just like giving you magic. You can come here and see like, okay, what were the exact times? Who was involved? How did NORAD and the FAA respond? Right. So it's taking all of these. It's asking questions. It's looking up keywords. It's doing research. Right. All from the files, not going to the internet, not hallucinating. This is the most important thing that if you take anything from what I'm saying, is that this system does not hallucinate. It cannot. If you see here, every single one of these, let's call them a claim is met with this red number. That red number corresponds to a document, right?
Real quick, Kevin, for those that aren't aware, what he means by hallucinating is we've been on Grok online or ChatGPT, and it just makes something up to fill in what it didn't know, and that's called hallucinating.
Yeah, a lot of like the LLMs, like your Chat GPTs, what they'll do is they're kind of made to make you feel really smart, right? To make you feel like some sort of way, and that is that's kind of not a good thing. You don't want a yes man in your life, right? And that's what a lot of these systems are. They become these yes men, and that doesn't work for people, right? Certainly doesn't work for me. I don't want somebody to tell me I'm right. I want something to tell me the truth or the approximation of the truth, right? So that is, and oftentimes, so what they'll do is they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. No, totally, you're right. Yeah." And then if there's a gap, well, it starts filling in the gaps, right? And part of it is you have to think too that this is artificial intelligence, and human intelligence often works the same way, right? Our memory is not a one for one. We remember snapshots, and then our brain fills in the rest. That is just like a data storage thing, right? That's so we don't overload our brains with too much. And so oftentimes AI can do the same thing, where it has chunks of the truth, and then it has to fill in the context in between. And when there's a lack of context, it starts to make things up that didn't happen. But here, every single claim has to be met with documentation, right? So you see these red numbers. I know it might be a little small for some of you on the screen, but these red numbers, each one of them is a document that's within the document set, right? And so this just is a timeline of the morning: 7:45, 8, 8:02, 8:14, 8:16, right? All throughout the day. What is the context? The first hijacking and attack, 9 to 9:59, second attack and response, right? This is how the morning kind of went. And then we could go deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So the other interesting part here, now that we're talking about documents and see these documents, what I could do here is I can now pin that document onto my board, right? And let's say I want to kind of zoom out a little bit. And so I really like that document. Okay, this is great. Now I got another document here. What's this one? Okay, the 9/11 timeline. Boom. I'm going to put that there as well. I'm going to move it over. Boom. Now I can take this, and so say these two are connected. Now I can connect a line between the two. Now let's say, just using an example here, I'm going to have a title. I'm going to take this because a lot of us are visual, right? So let's say I want to add in.
While he's doing that, a lot of people use all these AI search engines like keyword searching, like you use a search engine like Google or whatnot. The beauty in this is you can ask a complex question and it will interpret that and be able to pull documents and then link any of the documents that might mention associations, if you will.
Exactly. So, and this is, again, it's context, right? And so we say oftentimes context, not keywords. If you've tried to go into the Epstein files from the DOJ site, then like you're just looking up keywords and then you're going to get a bunch of things, maybe pages of results, and each result is a single document, and there's no context to how that document relates to the other documents, right? You would have to sift through tons of keywords, tons of documents, tons of time. It's just a time suck. And then you're in the middle of trying to answer one question, and then you raise another question, but you have to finish that question first, and maybe that takes you 5 days. And then you've already forgot the second question, or you already have 4 more questions that came in before you can even address the second question. And then you sit there and you wonder, is this disclosure, or is this, is this deliberate? And what we want is we want to be able to give you the opportunity to ask questions as you have them and investigate at the speed of thought, because that's what can happen here, right? So at the end here, right, like, so I'm starting to build my canvas over here, and maybe one section is the first morning or whatever. However, you literally, world's your oyster. You can do it however you want, right? And then now it could prompt you more questions that you could dig deeper down this thread, or you could just start asking more questions, right? And so I'll just take one of these, right? So copy that, put that in here. So this way you guys can see what a question, like how it works, right? So I'm asking this question. You see it thinking. You can see how quickly this comes, right? So the question is, Flight 93's last moments show passenger resistance. What do cockpit voice recordings reveal about the struggle? And so it's like, I'll investigate what the cockpit voice recordings reveal about the struggle on Flight 93. Let me start with 3 research calls to examine different aspects of the recordings and passenger resistance. So think about how many documents they're going through right now. Putting it all together, it's asking 3 questions in your one question. So one question can be robust. in like what it gives you back in context, right?
What's amazing is there's no human that could have a totality of all these documents in their mind and be able to make the connections.
So now
Kevin, it's 5:20. We do just a quick daily prayer. So if we could just take a pause real quick.
Absolutely. This is answering the question right now.
Okay. While it's doing that, for those that don't know, 5:20 is when Building 7 fell, and it just uses it as an opportunity to pray a quick prayer for 9/11 justice. So if you just pray with me for a sec. Lord, come to you right now. I thank you for all these hearts and minds that are still pursuing 9/11 justice all these years. I just ask for wisdom that we could use tools like the web to help raise awareness, to find information and link information that we weren't even aware that we could link, and just pray that we would see justice in our lifetime. In your name I pray. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. So now, in the time that it took to do that little prayer, which was incredible, by the way, now we have another report based on this specific thing, and you see all these red numbers, right? Now, this is giving a full timeline based off of the great work that you guys have put together, right? And so this is the full document, by the way, so 11 pages, right? But it'll put you right into like the most prevalent for like what you're looking at here. And so now, like I said, you could be adding that back in and start constructing another little node on your canvas if that's what you want. So, and there's so many more features that are coming and that we're working on and that that we're going to have here at launch. And we couldn't be more stoked about this because I think that at the end of the day, the government is constantly, like I said before, it feels deliberate in how or intentional in how like difficult it is to actually find a shred of truth in this disclosure. And it doesn't matter what disclosure it is. Epstein, 9/11, COVID, whatever, you name it, right?
Yeah.
They pretend to give you information. They overwhelm you with 3.5 million documents,
right?
And that's overwhelming. And so then you go like, well, there's got to be something in there, but like I work a job, I have kids, I can't go through all that. So then you look to other people to do that, and a lot of times they're going to content creators, and those content creators don't have the time or the bandwidth or the manpower to parse through all this stuff either. Yeah. So then all the truth kind of dies on the table because nobody can go through it fast enough to get the information out there. And by the time they did, there's something else already distracting you. There's something else.
Yes.
The news cycle is doing the news cycle. Trump is going to flood the zone with so much overwhelming stuff every single day that you can't keep track of anything. And then what? You're supposed to go and figure out the truth about one of the biggest events that's ever happened on American soil 24 years ago?
Yeah.
How are you supposed to do that? Like, you know what I mean? And so what you guys do is really incredible. You get together every week. You're constantly working, constantly sharing, constantly talking amongst yourselves, trying to put the little pieces together as you can. And that's incredible. We just want to amplify that work for you so that you can do it a little bit faster. You could do it in a way that like, oh, this opens up a question, and now I'm going to investigate that question in real time as if I had 3 research assistants working 24 hours a day, only it takes like a minute to get that answer.
Kev, would you happen to have time for some hands that came up?
Yeah, I got a solid 5 minutes, and then I got to go. I'd love to answer some questions.
I appreciate that. You guys got to make it quick.
Make it quick, make it to the point.
Al, go ahead. You're up.
Can you upload from the chat, say in a meeting like this, and settle, settle.
Al, shut your video off because it's lagging.
Can you upload from the chat, say in a meeting like this, and settle,
Al, shut your video off because it's lagging.
the questions?
Shut your video off because it's lagging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hearing like, can you add your own documents from
I don't think
chat?
it's add your own documents. I think it was.
Go ahead, try it again now. Now you're mute. We probably hear you better now.
So in a meeting like this, and everything ends up in the chat, and then people are arguing back and forth. Can it settle like what the truth is with documents and going live?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think theoretically, yes, right. So let's say, we're recording this conversation. You can get the transcript from that, right? And then you just like load that into a document, make that in like a PDF form or a document form of some type, and then you could drop that document into here. And so say like people are arguing about, whatever, right? Like something that's in these files, then yes, you could take that, put it onto this canvas, because this canvas, if you see, is my 9/11 canvas, and so it has all of the context of everything that's in this canvas, and then you could start asking questions on it. You would start a new chat. You say, here's, the text file of, this is the argument. Can you summarize the argument and then compare the the different sides of this argument to the 9/11 files that are here, and give me a breakdown of that. It absolutely could do something like that, like very easily.
Al, but if you're looking for like, hey, give me what is the truth on whether a plane hit the Pentagon or not, it's more geared for finding primary sources, and you make the decisions from all the primary sources that it'll give you.
Yes.
Okay.
Roy, go ahead.
I actually wrote out a number of different questions. I'll run them all together since there's such a time limitation. As Kevin, I'm sure, is aware, there is contradictory evidence about many aspects of 9/11. How do you handle the contradictory evidence? Can this AI decide in case of differing views and differing evidence, and if so, how? That's a big question. What about there's invasions, like if some particular group, if it's based on like a preponderance of the evidence, what's to stop some group from overloading the AI with a certain particular perspective? And finally, are there any limitations? Is anybody going to say this isn't allowed? We're not going to. This is disinformation, or we're not going to allow this. And how does Webb avoid the general co-optation by which you see in Wikipedia and Google and everything that everybody's presenting the same as percent?
Yes. So there's let's start with the last question, right? So there are document sets that are like our documents. They're vetted. They're scanned through. We make sure there's no child sex abuse material, things of that nature, right? And we make sure, and we also make sure that their sources are legit, right? So these sources are really great. They're coming from this community. We can trust in your community, and you guys can trust the validity of the information. And so yeah, you can you asked me a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So what you cannot do, right, is nobody can add to the document sets that we have. So the Epstein files, the 9/11, nobody can add to that in the pool of like what is given to everybody, right? Now, you could have, like, say you want to upload your own document set. If you upload your own documents, that stays to your canvas, to your account, right? Now, if you share, let's say, a workspace or a canvas with other people, then they could also access that too. But nobody's going to add anything like a Wikipedia. This is not open to people in the world coming in and adding to and changing and data poisoning. None of that's going to happen here because nobody has access to that except us. Like, our developers have. I don't even have access to that, right? And so that we're not really going to be worried about the data poisoning. And then in terms of conflicting data, it really comes down to how you interact with it, how you craft your questions, and there's a lot more technical stuff that like my developers and stuff would need to kind of answer that question better. But you can always kind of use like a Bayes theorem or something like that, where you're saying like, hey, like there's conflicting things. What are the probabilities of these things in context to what you see here? That sort of stuff. But again, like there's the idea is that you like it's only as good as the information you're feeding it. And so we're very confident about the information that we're giving and the data sets that we're giving you guys, but you're taking your own risks when it comes to whatever it is that you're uploading into your own account, or if you're going to say upload a document set, and then we would have to review it for its validity, and then to make sure again that there's no like CSAM or things of that nature that could get us taken down. And then through that process, which we haven't locked in yet, there theoretically is a way that you could upload your own data sets. Those data sets would be separate even if it's on the same topic. And again, it would always be, if it's not an official data set from us, you are taking a risk in not like that you're going to risk like being hacked or anything like that, but you are taking a risk in the validity of the information that you're giving. We have no control over that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Two more quick ones and then that's it.
Yeah.
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make this as succinct as I can. You say you can't add documents to your bank of documents that is part of your. Who decides what's in that? And because this is unlike what some people think, we're not all unanimous in the 9/11 truth movement about what's valid and what isn't valid. And so I think there would be a reasonable concern from a lot of people, including me, that certain people are deciding what goes into it.
I'll actually answer that one.
Recommend.
Yeah.
Guys,
Beg pardon?
Let me answer that, because I've been asking for the past 2 weeks for you guys to get information to me, and a lot of people got information, and a lot of people that I asked to didn't get information to me. At some point, they got to push this launch out, so it's really in the best interest of time.
Okay, if we're going to run out of time here, can I ask the question, finish with what I was asking? So Kevin, I guess I want to know, first of all, do you agree with what Gene said about primary documents? And I'm wondering what constitutes a primary document, because we have video footage of people giving testimony. Now, would that, be valid in video form? Would it have to be turned into a transcript? And who gets to decide what goes in there? I understand that Gene put that call out, but that's very short notice to sort of have to do it immediately. So that's a concern. But I just want to know, like, how we decide what type of document is appropriate for this database.
I think at the end of the day, right? So let's look at like the Epstein files, for example. Every single file that we have came from the DOJ. We haven't put anything in there that is not from the DOJ. So we can say that this, it's redacted to hell. It's got holes all in it, but we can say this is primarily sourced from the DOJ. And so you take that with whatever grain of salt that is for you, right? So the 9/11 information is sourced from these groups of people who have been doing this work. So you understand the full context of that. As journalists, you have to discern for yourself the validity of that information. And I understand that with this community particularly, there are many different schools of thought and things of that nature. My hope would be to represent all of it at some point, but obviously there is no single repository, single source, primary source of information where everything comes from. But as more things, like, for example, if the American government decides that they want to curry favor with the American people because we're losing a friggin' war that we don't want to be in, and they say, hey, we're going to release the 9/11 files. Okay, well then we say this is the 9/11 data set direct from the government. This is where it's sourced from, and then you put the validity to that for yourself, because some people are going to be like, oh, it's controlled, it's bullshit, and other people are going to be like, this is the truth we've been waiting for, and who knows what the fucking truth is, right? Like, at the end of the day, the whole idea is that you got to parse through kind of everything and then figure out what the truth is, and our system gives you the context of everything that would be given to you. And it would say
anything that goes to you is going through who? Like, is it going through Gene first, or how is it getting to you, and how is that being?
We're pretty much nearing the end of the time that they're going to go before this launch. So any more would be the data sets that you guys make individually, and then would put into the community that people could add those data sets into their canvases.
Yeah, we're going to be launching this week. So, but we definitely want to, you can give us more sets, things of that nature. We'll figure out exactly how to kind of handle that post-launch. But yeah, I mean, we want to keep this as the repository of information, the one place, right, where people can go through and they get the context. So I guess we have time for one more.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Sue, go ahead.
I appreciate having me.
Yeah, Kevin, this is very exciting. I used to work at a law firm, and so I'm very much interested in the legal aspects of things.
So am I.
Yeah. So I know one tactic that pre-trial, during the disclosure phase, the Inquisition, that a tactic would be a data dump, where your opposition, let's say the defense attorney for a polluter who's being sued delivers 1,000 legal boxes of documents to the prosecuting attorney who's on an environmental side or something. So it's like data dump. This is okay. Full disclosure. Here's your data dump. Ha ha. So this is open source, I assume, or that's the way you've designed it.
It will be. It is under the current way. It is not open source, but we have full intention of open sourcing this for the people who are technically savvy enough to run this locally, connect their own, APIs to it. And then, you could upload whatever documents till the cows come home, but you're incurring your own cost in doing so. Whereas this is going to be a little bit more available to people. Like, they're like, I don't know how to do APIs. I don't know how to run. I don't know. I don't want to wake up with $1,000 bill because I uploaded 1 million documents and I didn't know how it was going to be, right? Like, so we're sort of taking all of that on for people and then making public data sets that you're not paying for. Like every one of you would have to pay like the $5,000 or $6,000 it took us to pay for all of the Epstein files, for example, or the $5,000 that we paid to get all these 9/11 files in, like, and so that's why, like, we also have this version as well. So this version, this online version, will be the first sort of foray, and that this will always be here for people. But for the more technically inclined people who may want to like go through, maybe there's more sensitive documents, they want to run it locally, they don't want anybody like from the outside to be able to see their documents and their research, that will be open source, free, for everybody, that programming. But the first step was really doing this more commercial product so that we could beta test it with 60,000 people, really get an understanding of what people want. And then once we perfect this version that we're able to come out to market with, then we will have the open source version.
You answered my next next question. I was wondering if you were going to market this. This would be a fabulous tool for law firms and small lawyers.
So we 100% have that. So what we're doing is we're offering an enterprise version through this for people for people like for like the attorneys that maybe have like 3 or 5 people that they need seats for and stuff, and they'll be like like an enterprise SaaS.
Nice. Yeah. All right. I just want to thank Kevin again. Everybody keep your eye. It is at the web with 2 B's.io. Yeah. Get in an account. They're going to be launching next week. And just very exciting. Thank you, Kevin, for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And then, and I'm on X. It's me. I'm the one that's having fun on there.
Yep.
Calling out the BS, and we're going to be talking a lot about 9/11. And my business partner Ian Carroll, he already did a large live stream last week about 9/11. Yes. And as we launch, we are going to be diving deep into it. So just for you all to understand, my partner has millions of followers across all of his social platforms, and he's about to start talking about 9/11 using web at a very deep level, which will put hundreds of thousands, if not millions of eyes on this subject in the coming months. So it's on you guys to take that and further the discussion. If he does a live stream on Friday, I want you guys out there talking about it Saturday, Sunday through Thursday, because the discussion needs to be had by a lot more than just Ian, but he can kick that, he can get that snowball sort of rolling for us so that we can really get in there and start having a bigger discussion with younger people, because younger people who don't remember 9/11 need to know about it so that they can prepare themselves for what's coming, because what's happening right now, those of us who lived through it, we've seen this all before. Mm-hmm. We've been through this before, but for them it's their first time, and they actually have historical context to look at what happened in the past to inform the future. And it's on us to sort of reach out to those younger people and so start making more content, put things out there, start doing things like this, go on, make spaces on X, start bringing people into the discussion. What we can do is we can give a tool for you to investigate the files that you guys have been putting together for 25 years, and we can start getting that discussion going. But it's really on you guys to really work and keep doing what you're doing, and just keep doing it every day. Let's talk about this, and let's break this wide open until the point where the government has to start releasing some stuff, because we're not going to shut up about it.
All right. Yep.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing for a very long time. Every single day, each in their own way with their own tools.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm down to get back in here at any time, any other week, and talk with you lovely people.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Thanks so much.
Have a great Sunday, guys.
Take care, Kevin.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
Karl, you had your hand up. What do you got before I get back into the news?
Well, I wonder why you kind of cut off questioning when my hand had been up, and you kind of repeated.
Many times, so many hands were up. Do you have a question, Karl?
Well, a comment that, I have like the audio recording of my interview by Ron Johnson's committee, which would be kind of source. Also, the like 50 pages of documents I gave to them of my work schedule at Fresh Kills Landfill, all that. That's sort of like primary documentation that could be in there available. So, how about contact information for Kevin?
Well, he just told you, again, they're launching Monday. You have, at that point, you're going to be creating your own data sets to do that.
Well, but this is, of course, this is a data set of someone who actually was a responder who, has documents of my travel, shifts at the landfill. So to make that available to everybody.
Yeah.
From day one, well, how to get it to Kevin now? Since you
I've been asking for the past 2 weeks in emails and everything for people to get information to me.
Oh, so it has to go through you to get to Kevin.
I've been asking for the last 2 weeks. Thank you, Karl. Let's get back into the news.
We do want to get to Mick because his time is.
I'm sorry. Let's do that first. I apologize. Mick, thank you for joining. I did see you there. There you are.
Hi, Mick.
And Rick, guys. Well, and they've been working. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just acknowledging.
Yep. They've been working on trying to get this document together for Ron Johnson on the PSI committee, and I don't think Raul joined today.
Nope.
Let's see. Was there anything specific that we had questions for Mick that I could think of?
I don't know. You're the one who asked him to come on.
It's okay if you don't.
Well, anything that you want to just, share with people. There are questions out there that we get asked on a regular basis. We don't always know how to answer them because we're not part of the process. And, it's things that other people know better than we do. So if there's anything specific you'd like to share or someone has questions for you,
Sure.
This would be
maybe I should share sort of my overview of what I'm doing on the committee that's drafting this report, and then that might prompt questions from folks once they sort of hear my overview. First of all, I'm one of 5 anticipated primary authors of this new report, which was initially conceived as a report to Congress, specifically to Senator Johnson. And my own view is, and I'm not, don't take anything I say as speaking for any other members of the 5 authors or any other group. I'm just talking for myself here. My own view has broadened since the early stages. I'm now thinking about the report that we're drafting to be one that's going to go to a larger audience, not just to Congress, maybe to a larger audience in Congress. And we may create different versions of it for different audiences. And so I'm in my role in this group, and I was invited to join this group. I didn't insert myself into it, nor was I appointed to it. I was asked, and I agreed to help out, thinking I could be helpful. So I'm not representing myself in that role as being for the Lawyers Committee or being for any other group in the movement. And I'm certainly not representing myself to be representing the movement at large. I'm just trying to be helpful based on my prior work and what I know. And I do.
If I could, Mick, real quick,
just feel free to interrupt, Gene.
For everybody, I think everybody knows who Mick is, but for those that don't know, he was the former litigation director for the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. He took over for Dave Meiswinkle back, I forget how long ago that was, but he's done amazing work. He's also worked with architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth on the request for correction. He's also worked with Dave Cole, a researcher, on many, many, many FOIA requests. So Mick has
And ours.
And ours, yes. Mick has a very significant background in legal avenues behind 9/11. So.
Thank you, Gene. And I guess I should have warned people who don't know I am a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for 32 years. Public interest focused. I'm not a commercial lawyer. I'm primarily government oversight focused. Started out with the Government Accountability Project in D.C., a nonprofit, and I have kept that focus, which brought me to 9/11, and 9/11 turned out to be one of those deep holes that once you start investigating, you just keep learning more and you have to keep looking. So I'm still looking. So I'm open to receiving input from you all and others. I'm not restricting who all I receive input from my role in drafting this new report. So if there's something you want to have considered for inclusion in this report and you're not getting an audience anywhere else, you're welcome to tell me. You can tell me through email, but I am going to be announcing, and I'm hoping Gene and Sandra, maybe Richard, and maybe the Lawyers Committee will help me by posting my schedule, but I'm going to start scheduling Zoom meetings starting next weekend for the sole purpose of getting input from the community, the broader community of folks concerned about 9/11 truth, to inform my role on this committee of 5 in drafting this new report. I invite you to share your thoughts. I'm particularly interested in documents, in witnesses, evidentiary insights you may have after working on this for a while. And if you feel like there's something we need to know, join one of my input meetings and just tell me. So I can't promise that my co-authors will agree to include everything you tell me in the report. I can promise to evaluate what you tell me. If I find that is something that seems supported by hard evidence or logical inference from hard evidence, I'll do my best to get it included. So I'll let Gene and Sandra know when I'm going to schedule those meetings, and then maybe we can get the word out. Anybody who wants to participate is welcome. My role on this group of 5, I think you know who the 5 people are, Ted and Raul and Richard and Pierce and I, is to be a co-author editor. I also have been asked to be a team lead for an area addressing evidence regarding the alleged hijackers. I've agreed to do my best on that. I intend to insert myself. I hope I will be welcome in doing that in a quality assurance, quality control role to make sure that in all the sections we focus on, quality evidence and not go beyond our evidence. And to the extent that the law becomes relevant to something we're doing, this is not primarily a legal document. It's primarily an investigative and evidentiary document. But to the extent the law becomes relevant, I hope to assist my co-authors in letting them know what the law is on a particular issue, particularly regarding, how the law deals with different categories of evidence, but other issues may come up. So I do expect we'll focus on those questions that have the strongest evidence. I expect in the early sections of the report, after some preliminary background information, that we'll focus on areas which have the hardest evidence and actually draw some conclusions from that evidence. And in the later sections, I expect in those areas where the evidence is not fully developed, partially because it's still being hidden by others and we haven't had access to all of it, we will try to give Congress and others some guidance on what we propose for further inquiry, further investigations, to get to the bottom of those questions that we don't feel like we can answer with the evidence in hand. And I doubt that we'll be shy about suggesting areas of further inquiry for Congress, for law enforcement, for investigative media, and for you all in the movement. I don't think this inquiry is done, and I don't think the movement needs to, stop their efforts. I hope this report is helpful to the movement, not just to Congress, and I'll do what I can to make it that. I don't expect we'll try to answer all the outstanding questions on what happened and why regarding 9/11, and we probably won't have the time and resources to address all competing theories. That's not the purpose of this particular report. We're trying to marshal the hardest evidence, draw conclusions that are warranted, guide Congress, and hopefully motivate Congress in getting to the bottom of this. And I hope we also motivate others to do that. So let's see, what else can I tell you? I do expect we'll address government failures to properly investigate the 9/11 attacks. We'll be doing a lot of our own forensic analysis and summarizing evidence and drawing conclusions from that. The early sections about the demolition evidence, which you could predict would be included, and a lot of evidence analyzing the planes and the flights. A lot of that is going to be based on what I would call hard evidence. If you don't have to rely on a statement from the 9/11 Commission or the CIA or the FBI, which I don't call hard evidence. A lot of that, is out there because they want it to be out there and they want to create part of the false story with it. You have to take those sorts of sources with a grain of salt. But, witness evidence, scientific evidence, I call that hard evidence.
I know
go ahead.
I know back in the day you had said that Danny Sheehan wanted to get a lawsuit, a RICO lawsuit together, roughly would cost like $10 million to get together. But
he did say that.
Is there evidence that the Lawyers Committee, I'm sure there's some evidence that they hold those cards tight to their chest and they only want to play those cards later on. Is there a chance we might see some of that evidence played out in this report?
You should, we're not using the LC's analysis,
right,
of like RICO stuff. You'd have to ask, and I would encourage you to ask the Lawyers Committee about their future plans for future litigation. I think some of you know I'm not on the board anymore.
Right.
I'm still representing the Lawyers Committee on a suit against the FBI under FOIA to get records, the major bombing cases records. That's an ongoing battle. And I may still be being considered by the Lawyers Committee for future litigation. They can speak better to that than I can at the moment. I can't speak for the board. I'm still open to representing the Lawyers Committee in future litigation. I'm also open to representing others in future 9/11 litigation, and I'm giving some thought to it. One of the types of lawsuits besides RICO, and for those who don't know RICO, it's a federal racketeering statute. It's complicated. I won't try to explain it on this call unless somebody insists. But there's another legal theory I've put it out there to the movement to give some thought to. It's a First Amendment theory. I continue to recommend it to people's attention. It's focused on government cover-up. And you might wonder how those two concepts fit together, the First Amendment and government cover-up. But there was a lawsuit by Jennifer Harbury, a lawyer, some years back, related to the murder of her husband in a South American country during some revolutionary actions and some interferences by foreign governments, probably ours included. And her husband was eventually murdered by the dictatorial government with the knowledge of this RCIA. She was trying to save his life. And the CIA, the State Department, lied to her when she inquired about his status and whereabouts. And she only learned after the fact and after he was murdered what had happened. She brought a lawsuit alleging a government cover-up that harmed her. And in the process, the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. and the Supreme Court both ended up addressing her case and acknowledging this legal theory. They may not have given her the full remedy she sought for some legal technical reasons, which wouldn't necessarily relate to use in the 9/11 movement by this theory. But here's the short version of the theory. If there's a government cover-up of key evidence that prevents someone who's been harmed by someone else's wrongdoing from bringing a timely lawsuit to address that harm against the real perpetrators, and they've been handicapped in their legal relief, their legal remedy by the government cover-up, that person who is harmed, that could be a family member, it could be someone else harmed in their business by the 9/11 attacks, could be anyone who has damage of some kind, who could have brought a legal action, including possibly whistleblowers. They can bring a lawsuit against the federal government, and if they can prove the cover-up, and they're allowed to prove the cover-up, or try to, if they can prove the cover-up, then they're allowed to seek either an order from the court to force release of the evidence being covered up, and or if it's too late to sue the original wrongdoers, they're allowed to seek their remedy against the federal government and get the same damages and other relief they could have gotten from the original wrongdoers, because the government's cover-up caused them to be unable to get their remedy from the original wrongdoers. So just keep that concept in mind. If anybody wants to talk about it further, feel free to, maybe we'll schedule another call or something to talk about it. That will not be, Gene, just let me say, that will not be addressed in our congressional report to my knowledge. I'm just responding to your inquiry, Gene, on RICO. This is another sort of legal angle.
Yeah, I might pursue. I don't know how, because we don't have damages personally, but as you know, trying to get the the video footage from within 1 mile of the Pentagon, they wanted to charge us, what was it, $24,880 and give them 77 months. 72 months to respond, which is absurd. But we don't.
Yes, they did do that.
Yeah. So we don't have damages, but there's obviously a cover up from trying to get this information to us. So.
Well, and by the way, I mean, we should talk offline about that FOIA thing. That's not a dead issue in my mind, but
nice.
So, last thought before we take questions, if there are any, is in the report, I expect to recommend to my colleagues to address, I won't give you the answers in a moment, I'm still working on them. You may want to give me your thoughts on this. You're going to have early sections that talk about hard evidence regarding demolition, early sections that talk about hard evidence of a different nature, about the planes and the flights. And then we're going to go into the somewhat softer evidence regarding the alleged hijackers, who they were, who they weren't, what they did and what they didn't do, and analyze that evidence regarding the alleged hijackers in the context of what's been established in the earlier sections. And you may want to just give that some thought. But the big question is, what does it mean about the official story of the hijackers once you come to terms with the fact there was controlled demolition that was orchestrated by some other parties? And once you come to terms with exactly all the ins and outs of how the planes did their thing, I won't spoil anything on that in the moment, and I'm not the author of that section. But once you work through that evidence in those two categories, it means something, and it puts a new light on, what you learn about the hijackers, including their backgrounds, who they had contact with, and long story. So we're hoping to make a good effort at putting all those pieces of the puzzle together. Any thoughts you all have to help us, you are welcome to give us input. I'll stop there, Gene.
No, that was great. We do have a few hands up. Let's go to Craig.
Hi, Mick. I wanted to, first of all, I'm delighted to hear you make the comment that witness testimony is hard evidence. I'm very glad to hear that, because I think sometimes witness testimony gets maligned as being unreliable. I think too much. And specifically, I want to address the issue of the Pentagon with you, because from what I understand, the only thing that is going to be part of the report that deals with the Pentagon is Piers Robinson's study on the flight simulator study, which is fine as far as it goes. But I believe that the Pentagon is a vital part of 9/11, and I feel it should not be left out. And there's some very powerful witness testimony that shows that the plane was not on the official flight path, which means that essentially government involvement in the crime is proven by that fact. So now what I understand that your group, from what correct me if I'm wrong, but that you're not going to be proceeding with, yes, that you're not going to be proceeding with the whole issue of, was a plane crash staged, at the Pentagon, which I think is the key thing that proves government involvement.
You've given me enough to respond to initially, and you'll probably want to know my initial response before you finish your line of inquiry.
Okay, sure.
I'm okay with you doing if Gene is. So first of all, as a lawyer, even though I was trained initially in mathematics, last 32 years as a lawyer, I don't consider myself a scientist. So actually, eyewitness testimony probably means more to me than most people, because a lot of my work is based on eyewitness testimony. In legal cases, you don't always have scientific evidence in your litigation to help you. This case is unusual in the extent of scientific evidence available, which is a good thing for investigative purposes. But I still think, and I think, Graham McQueen did the world of service when he marshaled the evidence of the firefighters' testimonies. And so I'm open to any firsthand testimony, Craig, that you want to bring to my attention. I'm not an expert on the Pentagon. No one's ever tasked me yet with mastering the Pentagon evidence, and I don't expect to be tasked with it for this report. However, I think the Pentagon will be addressed in a number of ways before the smoke clears in this report. And I'm open to hearing anything about planes, plane flight paths, anomalies, irregularities about the planes, irregularities about the flight paths, anything about communications during the flights. I'm very open-minded, and I haven't decided yet what I'm going to propose be included in regard to all that evidence on the Pentagon, or about Shanksville. And you're welcome to give me what you have and give me your pitch about why you think it's important. And we can do that in one of our meetings, or we can do it privately, but I'm very open-minded to it. I haven't drawn conclusions on the Pentagon. I do believe that, I'm just speaking for myself here, that what happened at the Pentagon should be evaluated now, somewhat retrospectively, based on what we have learned about what happened at the Trade Center. I do not think the modus operandi of the crimes of 9/11 that happened at the Pentagon are that different than the modus operandi of the crimes that happened at the Pentagon. So if you, for example, if you see evidence at the Trade Center of pre-planted explosives to create the shock and awe effect, or to destroy evidence, or whatever it was there for, I think you need to keep an open mind that there may have been pre-planted explosives at the Pentagon for similar purposes. Doesn't mean there weren't planes. Okay? Just like it doesn't mean there weren't planes at the Trade Center. It just means you've got a combined strategy for sophisticated planning purposes by the perpetrators, which I'm pretty sure were not just the alleged hijackers. And so I would look at the Pentagon with an eye towards seeing similarities to what happened at the Trade Center. If you saw unusual plane maneuverings approaching the Trade Center, you may look for unusual maneuverings of aircraft approaching the Pentagon. I didn't say planes necessarily. And there may have been planes. I'm open-minded on everything involved here. My own view is some things went wrong in this complicated attack on 9/11. It was well planned. A lot of things probably went as planned, including some of the things that may seem to us that it may be something went wrong, like Shanksville. I'm not convinced yet that that was something that went wrong. That may have been planned. They may have planned for that plane to go down, like it did, to have this story, heroic Americans bringing the plane down. You may have had heroic Americans bringing the plane down, but it may have been something that somebody wanted to further their motivations towards war. So the idea that, my own view of the World Trade Center 7 is that there was another plane intended to hit it. Not everyone agrees with me, including people on my committee. That's just my view, and that plane didn't get there, which is why that building came down in broad daylight late in the day on 9/11. You all can give that some thought. But it's possible, because there were at least 5 different interruptions of planned aircraft takeoff and flight paths on 9/11. There were 2 airlines that did ground stops during the attacks, and there were 2 federal agencies that did ground stops. All 4 of those kept planes from taking off, and there was ultimately the order to land all planes in the air at the nearest airport, which was an unprecedented order. So I think it is entirely possible that there was a plane intended to reach the Pentagon that didn't get there. If that happened, then they would have gone to Plan B. So, and it could be some of both. Maybe more than one plane was intended to reach there. Maybe one plane reached and one plane didn't. So it's fairly complicated. We don't know all the answers. I'm very open, Craig, to being educated on the Pentagon.
Well, that's very good news, Mick. I appreciate that, and I'll just follow up quickly with, I've recently started a new 9/11 group called Exposing 9/11, and one of the cornerstones is comes from my own philosophy on this, is that we could argue about competing theories about a lot of aspects of 9/11 for many more decades to come, and that's why I prefer to focus on exposing the lies of the official story. And, we don't necessarily have to know exactly how every element was done, as long as we can prove that the event was staged and a deception. So that's, to me, a unifying way of doing it, rather than, and I understand, because you mentioned competing theories before, and, if you've got 10 different competing theories, like, how do you decide what do you include, what don't you include? Well, how about just focusing on the stuff that we can prove is not correct in the official story.
I tend to agree with
I also
Greg on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's only take a minute to
but
agree.
Shanksville.
Yeah, before you go on, before we lose the train of thought, I expect quite a bit of that to be done in our report, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's good. Very good news. I would say about Shanksville, I'll throw it in just quickly for the hell of it here. I mean, I think that the fact that that a plane is supposed to have buried itself under the ground in a field in Shanksville is the most outrageous part of the official story. Probably the single worst, most outrageous thing. And I don't actually believe an airliner ever crashed in Shanksville. But that's another big topic.
Well, it is.
I always just feel. Yeah.
So, Craig, I can share a couple insights on Shanksville if you want to know them at the moment from my own inquiry.
Absolutely. Indeed.
So I don't know all the answers on Shanksville. I did interview the coroner with Dave Meiswinkle. Dave did a public records request to his credit in Pennsylvania, litigated it, basically persuaded the county to negotiate, which got Dave and I a trip to the coroner's office and a chance to review his files firsthand, which we did. And they were disturbing files. There were a lot of photographs of the remains and so forth. And so it was a hard thing to do. But there were some interesting things that came out of it, questions that weren't answered, some that were. One of the documents we received was a letter from a family member of a passenger on 9/11 who perished, who attended a meeting that the public was not invited to with the FBI and the, I don't know if NTSB attended or chose not to attend, and the coroner was there, and the families were briefed on what was known in the early stages after the crash. And to her credit, this family member wrote a letter back to the coroner recounting what she was told in that non-public meeting and asked the coroner to confirm her recollection on those things. Now, I don't know that the coroner ever did go right back and confirm. We'll have to sort through those records and try to find that out. But a couple of things that were noteworthy. One was they were told, the family was told there were just small pieces of everything. There weren't large pieces of anything left at the crime scene. I think she said 3 inches or smaller, something like that. And then there was a legal filing in the Pennsylvania State Court by the coroner seeking death certificates for the passengers because the family members wanted to get closure regarding their loved ones and their insurance benefits, which is hard to do without a death certificate. And the coroner announced early on that he did not have enough DNA evidence to identify the remains of most of the people purportedly who were on that plane that crashed there. Now, that story changed later over time, and eventually the coroner said that he received DNA evidence for most of the passengers. And however, that DNA evidence, as I recall, and I think we have records on this, came from a military laboratory that did the DNA analysis, which does not reassure me. I won't tell you all the reasons that does not reassure me at the moment. So, however, in the process of making that filing, the coroner said to the court that the coroner was not seeking death certificates for 4 of the passengers. He called them passengers, but I'm pretty sure he was referring to the alleged hijackers. Although, who knows, history may show his wording may turn out to be more correct on that plane. But what he said was he was asked not to seek death certificates from the court for those 4 because the FBI informed him those 4 might have been using, I forget the exact wording, but it meant false identities, assumed identities. So even though they had, I think at that point, the official names of the people alleged to be the hijackers, the FBI was telling the coroner not to use those names, which I found interesting. There were some other aspects that we can share later. We probably ought to just have a meeting at some point about Shanksville.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to add in two other ones that I'm aware of. I talked to a Pennsylvania State Police officer that said that he cordoned off a crater miles before the alleged crash site. And when I asked him about where it was, he said it was so busy I couldn't tell you. I said, "Could I get the police report?" And he laughed and he said, "No." But he's a friendly guy that I could talk to. I trust him. He's credible. He was the.
Gene, I wouldn't mind you making an effort to get that.
Yes, 10-4. And second, Sandra and I talked to an eyewitness. He was in grade school. When 9/11 happened, he was sent home, and he said as he walked in the door at home, he felt the ground rumble, and they were miles away from the alleged crash site. So I think these two things are in close proximity, that crater and where his home was. We didn't get the home address yet, but two very odd things, miles away from the alleged crash site.
Well, let me give you one more tidbit or two, and then we'll let Craig finish his thoughts, and we can go on to other questions.
Yes.
Some of you may not know this, which is why I thought I should mention it while I'm thinking about it. We did get, thanks to Dave Cole, an audio transcript of an FAA call which had multiple parties on it during 9/11. This was a live recording of people talking to each other real time. And I listened to it, and I took good notes on it. One of the more interesting things, which may relate to Shanksville, that came out of that review of that call was, at one stage in the call, the FAA reported to the other participants that the Secret Service had reported that a plane had gone down at Camp David, specifically said Camp David, which is not that far from, it's in Maryland, but it's not that far from Shanksville. And it's sort of possibly on the route if you're going from the Shanksville area to DC. And then later in that call, someone interjected to say the Secret Service confirms that a plane is down in Camp David. And then later in the call, someone comes on to say the Secret Service has, and I forget the exact wording in this, but what it meant was retracted their report and corrected themselves to say that there was not a plane that crashed at Camp David. Now, keeping in mind that the Secret Service is responsible for protecting Camp David, being a retreat for the president, what are the odds that the Secret Service could get something like that incorrect,
right? Not
only once but twice, and then have to correct it. So that's food for thought and further inquiry. There are also, as most of you probably know by now, eyewitness reports of planes and other aircraft in different locations going different directions during and surrounding the time of the attack, and there was more than one debris field. So
yes,
there's still a lot to be developed in that inquiry.
Yeah. Craig, any final thing?
I'll just say thank you very much for all that, Mick. I appreciate you answering my questions so thoroughly. I do appreciate that. I'd love to be in touch and further, and I will do that. I believe I think I have your email. Okay. And I guess that pretty much covers it. I just wanted to, I always want to remind people of the fact that this evidence is so important because it directly ties the government to the whole event, which as great as the World Trade Center evidence is, it doesn't quite so blatantly do that, in my opinion. So that's why I always try to remind people not to forget about the Pentagon evidence.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Really quickly, I want to politely say I have a different theory of what 1-7 was supposed to go down. I think it was a botched demolition, and it was supposed to go down when 1 went down in the dust cloud. A lot of people assume that Flight 93 was heading towards Building 7. I just wanted to show it real quick. 3 different sources, the 9/11 Commission Report, U.S. News and World Report, and St. Petersburg Times, all saying that basically Flight 93 requested a change on its flight path from wherever it was going to Reagan International Airport. So from San Francisco originally and changed it to Reagan National Airport. So I don't know. I just want to leave that there. That's all.
That's an interesting.
Let me throw this in too. Just along the lines of what you said, Gene. I think the section of the Pentagon wall that came down half an hour after the big event was probably supposed to happen at the time, and for some reason didn't happen until 30 minutes later. That's just a theory, but
yep, could be second Bosch demolition. I don't know. Anyway,
so could be.
Well, yeah, Gene, I'm open to your point of view on that, and I think other members of my committee probably are more in your camp on that. However, if you would allow me to give you one point to think about,
okay,
on your theory,
yep,
the idea that Building 7 could have come down earlier in the day under the cover of the dust cloud, I think had it come down at that time when the towers were falling, it would not have been videotaped as clearly as it was videotaped falling later, and that might have been to the benefit of the perpetrators. However, it still would have collapsed as completely as it did collapse. You may not have seen all the uniformity and speed, but when the smoke cleared, there wasn't going to be a lot standing in Building 7.
Correct.
And so then you have to explain how asymmetrical damage from some part of one of the towers hitting it can cause a complete collapse, even though you didn't see it. Yeah. You see the result of it. So I suspect the evidence, I'm not trying to win a battle of competing theories at the moment, but I suspect the evidence is more consistent with they wanted another plane to be a cover story for another complete collapse. Not that that is a very good cover story anyway, as we can now see, but I think the 9/11 movement may have surprised the perpetrators and the technical sophistication of the critique that came after 9/11. But, I'm not sure those folks really cared how much they got embarrassed afterwards about their story being wrong. I just think they wanted to get us into that war.
I think if we look at 7 and the modus operandi of a building falling globally symmetrically and against the path of most resistance, as Jerry might agree, we should really look at 1 and 2 buildings that definitely also should not have fallen globally symmetrically and against the path of most resistance. And we all just sort of went, yeah, that's perfectly normal. But none of us caught it at first.
Yeah. Do you have time for another sort of insight into the attacks?
Yeah.
I'm just talking for myself here. I'm not talking about the Lawyers Committee or the Committee of 5 or anything. Just
you're such a
my
lawyer,
own insights. What's that?
I said you're such a lawyer. I like the way you protect yourself always.
Well, actually, in this case, I'm trying to protect everybody else so they don't have to defend what I'm telling you. I'll take responsibility for it.
Yes.
So most of you know that I did play a role in drafting the report to Congress on the anthrax attacks with the Lawyers Committee, and if you haven't read that, I encourage you to read that. But basically, it showed a government cover-up, primarily from the FBI, and that the perpetrators of those attacks are still out there. But I bring that to your attention because those anthrax attacks, as most of you remember, happened a few weeks after 9/11, not long after. And initially, the public statements from the press and some government sources were that people were trying to blame the anthrax attacks on Iraq, Al-Qaeda, whoever, until it rapidly became known that the attack anthrax was U.S. military grade, highly sophisticated, and could not have come from Iraq or Al-Qaeda. And at that point, the FBI started looking for someone domestically to blame, and eventually, I think, settled on the wrong guy, or at least they settled on not getting all the perpetrators. So the reason I mention this is you probably have all read the stories about Cheney and Bush and others being given Cipro to protect against anthrax in advance of 9/11. And there was some of you may remember the story about 1 or 2 of the hijackers seeking medical attention pre 9/11 for what appeared to be anthrax injuries. And if you haven't seen that, you might want to look at that. And what was I going to tell you? So in the run-up to the passage of the Patriot Act, there were a couple senators resisting the rush to pass that law, which, as you may remember, narrowed our civil liberties and made a lot of things easier for the government to get by with, including probably torture, even though it wasn't ever, I think, legalized. So there were a couple of senators who were resisting the rapid passage. Those two senators happened to become targets of anthrax letters. And I simply want you all to put on your radar screen the possibility that whether it was Flight 93 or some other plane that got grounded that did not make it to Washington, D.C., a lot of folks officially were saying that her plane was heading to Washington, D.C. A lot of folks after the fact said they thought her plane was targeting Washington, D.C. And some folks were anticipating a biological weapons attack, specifically anthrax. It is possible, and this is not a conclusion, it's more of an investigatory hypothesis. I'll put it on your radar screens in case I don't get to finish my inquiry into it. The reason I mention it is possible that anthrax was actually planted in the Capitol pre 9/11, just like explosives were planted at the World Trade Center in the Pentagon pre 9/11 to be used on 9/11. And the cover story for that attack at the Capitol with anthrax may have been a plane carrying anthrax that did not reach the intended target. And therefore, someone else had to do something about the anthrax that was pre-planted, for which they no longer had a cover story. That could have been the letters and the anthrax attacks. As you may or may not know, there was a very expensive government/military contractor-led cleanup of the Capitol buildings where the anthrax letters arrived to clean the place of anthrax, which would have been a very efficient way to remove any anthrax that had been planted. So just pieces of a puzzle, not all put together. But so when I'm saying that, the investigation isn't over for the movement, this is the piece I think that, just like Shanksville and the Pentagon, requires further inquiry.
Excellent. We have 4 hands up. This forum's going a little long, but that's great because this is fantastic information, both from Kevin and from Mick. So go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I hope I'm audible and that the background noise isn't an issue.
It's really got you, Bob.
Question for the lawyer. How many lawsuits have been done since 9/11 relating to any part of 9/11, but how many lawsuits, and how many of those lawsuits have actually been heard by the court? And as sort of an add-on to that, if somebody is formulating another lawsuit to be launched, just as a piece of, who's been harmed by this, we could find millions of airline passengers who've been the victim of petty theft, who've been the victim of bullying by TSA agents, who have had their time wasted by TSA agents. It should be simply a piece of cake to go, oh, we have this million people that will testify that TSA is not only anti-productive, that they're a total mess. So that's where I'm at this.
Well, the TSA thing and the FAA thing deserves further inquiry. Whether there would be a lawsuit for that type of damage, I don't know if a law firm would take it. I probably would not. However, I am sympathetic to the point you make. However, let me answer the first question first as best I can. Let me tell you the lawsuits I remember. You all can count them up as we go. I've never counted them. There was initially a lawsuit under, I think, RICO and the False Claims Act brought early on that got dismissed as frivolous, alleging a lot of what this was in the early days, alleged to be very much conspiracy theory stuff. Some components to that were probably incorrect, and they didn't have the benefit of all the evidence that developed in the movement in the years after. So that early lawsuit didn't go anywhere. There was a lawsuit by attorneys on behalf of April Gallup, who was injured at the Pentagon. And I believe that lawsuit got dismissed. I was not involved in that. However, I'm very sympathetic to April's claims. And she might be someone, she may not be interested these days. I don't know April. But other folks at the Pentagon might be interested in this theory I mentioned earlier about the government cover-up theory. I think her case suffered from the fact that the cover-up was still ongoing at that time. The truth had not come out. And so her attorneys didn't have the benefit of that evidence and that truth. And that's a difficult thing to do. So that lawsuit didn't win. There have been, I don't know, maybe 5 or more Freedom of Information Act lawsuits related to 9/11. I was involved in 3 of them for David Cole and involved in a 4th for the Lawyers Committee at the moment. Those lawsuits resulted in some new documents being released that had not been previously released. You can thank David Cole for that. I helped him by litigating those. The last one settled. I got paid a little bit of my attorney's fees, as a very small portion. And we did get a chunk of documents released, not everything Dave wanted. And the defendants, NIST and FEMA, are still pretending to not be able to find some key evidence, which you wouldn't expect to be misplaced. Long story on that. So we did bring a lawsuit with the Lawyers Committee against the FBI regarding the 9/11 Review Commission, not the 9/11 Commission, the 9/11 Review Commission, which was 2012-2013 era. You may not remember that second commission, but it was supposed to, Congress had directed the FBI to do a new inquiry to look at all the new evidence and even all the old evidence that was never addressed by the original commission. And the FBI pretended to do that with the new commission, and they basically did a whitewash and ignored all the evidence of the demolition and a lot of other evidence, including Pentagon evidence, and you can go down the list. So the Lawyers Committee and at least one family member and one nonprofit sued. We did not win that lawsuit because of the technicality of the way Congress had imposed on the FBI the duty to do this new investigation. To make a long story short, the Congress had put into a funding bill a request for the FBI to do this new inquiry, and they put it into a regular piece of legislation so that it became a mandatory duty. We might have won that lawsuit, but we didn't. The court found it was not an enforceable duty, and so we couldn't get an order to force them to go back and do it right. We did bring another lawsuit to try to force the U.S. Attorney in New York to give our petition of demolition evidence to the grand jury. After a long battle in the district court and the Court of Appeals federal, the courts decided, strangely enough, that neither the Lawyers Committee nor 9/11 family members nor first responders had legal standing to force the U.S. Attorney to do his mandatory duty under the special grand jury statute to transfer evidence of a federal crime reported by citizens to a grand jury. So we didn't win that one. We should have probably won that one, but we didn't. I think the court was wrong on the law on that. The Supreme Court didn't see right to fix it for us. And let's see what else we got going on. There is the 9/11 families lawsuit that is still alive against the Saudis. It is not using a broad theory like the Lawyers Committee or first responders or family members in other contexts might use. That lawsuit is addressing sort of the tip of what we all know to be the iceberg of the 9/11 attacks. It's looking at, Saudi support for a select number of alleged hijackers and associates. That's as far as that lawsuit is going. It may be correct as far as it goes, and they might be entitled to legal relief as far as it goes, but it's probably not going to break open 9/11 truth, even if they win. Might get the family some money, which I would not be against.
You helped the 9/11 Truth in the request for correction.
Thank you so much. I actually should remember that since I litigated it. So we brought a lawsuit for architects and engineers, and that was the organization, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, AE 9/11, plus a bunch of individual architects and engineers and some family members trying to force NIST to go back and do their report on Building 7's collapse with scientific integrity under the Information Quality Act he did not win that lawsuit. And I haven't looked at that decision in a while, so I hesitate to try to summarize the court's reasoning. But I believe it was that there was no mandatory duty on NIST to do more than they did, which I found to be incongruous with the statute. Go ahead.
To provide a scientifically accurate report.
I think the court found that they didn't have that duty.
Right.
That even if they did commit fraud, all they had to do was issue a report and they met their duty.
Yep.
Even if it was fraudulent. I found that disturbing.
Reprehensible, yeah.
So I'm trying to remember, there was I'm leaving out somebody's lawsuit, I think.
The one that's coming up about our FOIA request for the 100 videos around the Pentagon.
We'll need to be talking, maybe we'll talk about that on the next episode.
Yep.
That's not all in between.
Future lawsuit.
Okay, I'll stop there for the moment.
Yeah, that was good. So there's been a lot, Bob. Thank you very much, Mick, for that answer. We'll go to Karl and Eric and Jerry.
Mick, hi, Karl Golovin. We've spoken a few times over the decades. I just sent you a connection request on LinkedIn. Is that the best way to connect with you?
No, but who's my email? Do you have my email?
I don't believe so. Do you mind sharing it?
ESQ, MICKHARRISONESQ, as in Esquire, at gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, following up on Gene, Gene has adopted a position I expressed soon after I was awakened by the gentleman out in Utah who was doing research 2006, 2007.
Stephen Jones?
Right, that when I had been a secondary responder assigned in part to sift the finer rubble of number 7 after it was brought to Fresh Kills landfill, we, and this has been expressed to Ron Johnson's committee, they have documentation I'd like to provide to you. It probably should come to them as part of the report as well, that we worked on sifting machinery at Fresh Kills, and we were tasked because we were told CIA Secret Service wanted anything that might be a computer component removed from the finer rubble. We working 24-hour shifts on the sifting machinery, we put things into white buckets that other people took away and presumably analyzed to provide a degree of confidence to whoever ordered the whole process. And I theorized and shared this actually even back working in the Ron Paul campaign 2007, 2008. I expressed it directly to Tucker Carlson in person, driving him around Nevada along with Dr. Paul, that we might very well have been, without even knowing it, extracting undestroyed demolition electronics from the rubble that would have been left over from a failed demolition attempt earlier in the morning. So I'd like to get all that paper documentation to you, photographs. I even have photographs of the sifting machinery at Fresh Kills that we worked on. And I have an audio recording for you of about a half-hour interview with the PSI staff of Ron, and they cut it off after a half hour. They said they had to be somewhere else, but we've not had adequate follow-up in my experience, because I began to explain to them, I know you referred to hard and soft evidence, but I was trained to think in terms of either direct and circumstantial being the only kinds of evidence one sees in the fence.
Distinction is made just the way you stated it.
Right, and when one has false flag events, there's going to be abundant misleading direct evidence planted by the perpetrators. I mean, even go back to JFK. I mean, how much of Lee Harvey Oswald is actually just misdirection?
Controversy, because it's not all that reliable.
And that's where I began to talk with the staff of Sarah Johnson about circumstantial evidence, not just in the immediate context of 9/11, but even historically. I mean, false flag, the Lavon affair, which was almost a direct parallel. A U.S. interest bombed by Egyptian Jews masquerading as Muslims that were recruited by Mossad. It resulted in Senate hearings that led to John Kennedy being advised by a Senate Foreign Relations Committee to register the Israeli lobby as a foreign agent. So I began to speak about the allegations of Mossad Israeli involvement. Of course, all the Israeli spies were rounded up and allowed to be sent back home. But I particularly mentioned to them Christopher Bolin and Dr. Alan Sobrowski, who was director of studies at the Army War College. He has very succinctly made the case from circumstantial evidence that only certain intelligence and military entities could have pulled off the choreographed, logistically coordinated events of 9/11. And I would hope that, he's of record. He's still alive. He's in his mid-80s. His vision is failing. He could still testify. But, he's on the record of his succinct analysis that there had to be explosives pre-positioned in all three towers. And actually, once you realize there had to be explosives pre-positioned in 7, it goes from there to only a few entities in the world would be capable of pulling this off. But I won't go on too much longer. I just wanted to leave these thoughts with you. As far as evidence goes, sometimes the absence of evidence is the evidence, and I would say the absence of any evidence that a 757-200 crashed at the Pentagon is sufficient to refute a great deal. There not being either video or other evidence of that much debris. And will you be approaching things from the perspective of Kimono, who benefited? Of course, we were drawn into the global war on terror, which is Christopher Bolin in his book The War on Terror, a very concise text. His analysis is that that has been an Israeli construct even since Netanyahu began to advocate it back in the 80s. So finally, there was a insurance-related investigation regarding WTC-7. I actually run into a former CIA person in Alexandria who I might still be able to get in touch with. She, I think, was functioned as an attorney in that litigation, and I wonder what they actually revealed about reasons that the building was believed to have collapsed. I'll get back to you on that. Lastly, on the Saudis, my experience is that from having worked with informants and having worked parallel development of cases from intelligence community lead information, that a very plausible notion is that the Saudis were kind of set up to be like, tag, you're it. I mean, if the CIA goes to the Saudis and say, hey, we think a bunch of guys are trying to plan hijacking of aircraft and they're like some Saudis, can you work some of your informants into that group and maybe funnel some money so we can track the money? And then, a week after 9/11, hey, sorry, you guys better keep working with us in the Middle East, or else we're gonna pin 9/11 on you guys. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, about the evidence, let me just give you a couple quick insights from my point of view, speaking again only for myself. From what I'm seeing from all the evidence that we have readily accessible, still a lot being hidden by government entities, the crimes of 9/11 were not perpetrated by a single entity or a single organization or a single nation. There may have been players, and there appear to have been players from several different nations. It doesn't mean those nations' governments approved what they did necessarily. Certainly doesn't mean those nations' peoples approved what they did. But there were players, maybe military intelligence background players from several different nations. If you look at everything that happened on 9/11, and you look at the sophisticated anthrax, the sophisticated nanothermite, the sophisticated planning, pre-planning, why none of the planes were intercepted, you could go down the list, and also the sophisticated recovery story and cover-up. Put all those pieces together, and what do you have? Well, if you start looking at all those pieces together, what you have is basically a special operations pattern, that this was a carefully planned special operation by entities from several nations, not necessarily the governments, certainly not the peoples. And I don't think any one of them could pull it off without the help of the others.
Well, Vivek, if I could...
There's a cover story that's been created, and there may be some folks who had evidence planted to sort of point to them falsely. We have to be careful about that, not falling following false trails. But there's also real evidence out there implicating several different entities. And, I agree with you that some direct, what otherwise might appear to be direct evidence may be false evidence. The fact that it's direct, meaning you can see it, you can test it, whatever, doesn't mean that it's not fabricated. Same is true for testimony. You can have real testimony and you can have false testimony. That's part of our task in trying to sort this stuff out. It's not a piece of cake. And we all need to be careful not to go beyond what we can be certain of from our evidence, while not dismissing evidence just because we can't be certain of it.
I encourage you to especially focus on the writings of Christopher Boleyn, who contemporaneously had expressed insights and gathered, especially pointed to circumstantial evidence of those who were capable of remotely piloting aircraft, even substituted for the commercial aircraft, which it could have been very well the circumstance. That was even a part of Operation Northwoods, to substitute aircraft in flight for an operation. And as Dr. Sobrowski would point out, Mossad, one of the unique abilities they have is to tap on the shoulder people in the global Jewish community who, they might be terrified to not help with whatever they're told they must help with. And you look at a guy like Larry Silverstein. Did someone give him a little wink, nod, tap on the shoulder? Hey, you need to acquire these buildings. You better insure them against terrorism. And just don't worry about anything ever coming back on you. We've got you covered. But
theories like that, I would just caution you to not go too far publicly with making allegations against specific people or entities until you get the evidence in your hand. I'm not saying that evidence might not be found.
Well, there's a difference.
Try to get it in your hand before you go public with an allegation, just to protect yourself.
There's a difference between an allegation, though, and an analysis. And if we're I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mick. I got 4 hands if you can do it.
I'll stick with you guys.
Thank you. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is fairly quick. It has to do with the FOIA request by Gene and Sandra, having to do with those videos at the Pentagon. Is there, obviously 77 months and however much money may not work out so well. If there was a grand jury investigation like you're looking with Richard, if that was produced, can they demand that and bypass?
That's a good question. The short answer is yes. A grand jury can subpoena all those records. They don't have to pay for them. They can just order it to be produced by a government entity. Doesn't matter who the government entity is. So yeah, those documents can be acquired. Congress can do the same thing with a congressional subpoena by an investigative body of Congress, and I think they should do that.
Thank you. That's a quick answer and a concise.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Jerry from Scotland.
Hello. Hello, Mick. Thank you for your work. I missed the beginning of your presentation because of the clocks changing. I got confused, but I'll go back and listen to it. But suffice to say, you'll never please all of the people. We have such a wide and diverse movement that you're never going to please all the people in any presentation that you make. I was wanting to speak to Gene's point there, which I agree with, about the relation between Building 7, the timing of it, and the towers. It seems to me quite obvious that Building 7 was meant to come down earlier. If it had come down earlier, we wouldn't have had people inside looking at elevators in the middle of office spaces, for example. We wouldn't have the free fall acceleration, but most importantly, we wouldn't have the difference in the towers failure, which is a very, very explosive event. When you look at Building 7, it's an implosion. It's a very standard controlled demolition, and I think the difference between these two, well, the towers events and Building 7's events, make it very stark that what does a building look like that comes down due to fire? Because as we're looking at that, it looks that way with the towers and it looks this way with Building 7. I think that was meant to come down earlier, but I think that speaks to a wider point here, that when you look at Shanksville, when you look at the Pentagon, what does the official story say about these events that is actionable, that we can go to? And actually not very much. They've left themselves enough room, whereas if we come up with a theory, they've left themselves enough room to pivot to another story. We know that they're willing to lie. Why won't they lie now? Of course they will. And they've left themselves enough wiggle room there at the Pentagon, at Shanksville, to say, well, actually, yeah, we have reviewed that again, and here's what happened, which ties in with your evidence, and totally pivot away and cover anything that we get. I would encourage a focus on Building 7 and on the towers that will hopefully lead to people then looking at the Pentagon and other events. But because, as you said, if the towers were imploded and with pre-planted explosives, then we know that the Pentagon reasonably didn't suffer a random terrorist attack on the same day. So I think the focus should quite rightly be mostly on the buildings. And I know Craig won't agree with that. He's hands up already. and I commend him. He's stuck to his issue there. And I think where Craig is onto something is that the structural damage at the Pentagon isn't consistent. Doesn't look consistent with that plane impact. It just doesn't. The structural impact, if it's got enough to blow this hole in the ceiling, then where's the commensurate amount of damage from the other engine internally in the building? So I think we need to lead toward that, and a focus on Building 7 and the towers will do that. But thank you for all your work and for the rest of the group who are putting that together.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. So if I could, Gene, just to make a comment.
Yep.
On the Pentagon, just to be clear, there are only a couple reasons why I have not yet immersed myself in the Pentagon mystery. One is limits of time and money and everything else that's available to be focused on. And two, I haven't been tasked with it by anyone. And as a lawyer, I pretty much do what I'm tasked to do. But let me be clear. That doesn't mean I don't consider the Pentagon to be equally important here as the World Trade Center. I do. And in some ways, it may be more important because, the attacks on the Trade Center could have been dismissed legally, politically, publicly as terrorism, but not as an act of war. But an attack on the Pentagon is pretty much going to solidify the excuse to go to war, because you can't attack another country's military headquarters without it being seen as an act of war. So there was a reason for it. There was a reason for every component of this complex set of crimes. It was, not randomly put together. Everything served a purpose. And so because of the importance of the Pentagon, it deserves really careful scrutiny. There may have been an intention to destroy records at the Pentagon. That may be why a certain location of the building was hit. Just like Building 7 held a lot of sensitive records, CIA, insider trading investigations, a lot of things. A lot of evidence got destroyed of a lot of crimes, coincidentally, on 9/11. Probably not accidentally. And the same may be true at the Pentagon. So the Pentagon deserves really careful scrutiny. And if there was a plane swap for the Pentagon, which I do not rule out myself, because somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Pentagon Flight 77 was the only plane that had a flight path, which, by the way, I don't know any terrorist or military person in their right mind who would fly that far out of the way, away from the target, only to turn back and waste a lot of time getting to the target. They could have just made a turn and been at the target. That's highly suspicious and had to have a purpose. And the purpose, to me, appears to be that at the end of the route where it turned around, Flight 77, it appears to be the one relatively dead spot in radar coverage. And to me, that is highly unlikely to be a coincidence. And if there was going to be a plane swap, that's probably where it happened.
I accept the importance of the Pentagon and of Shanksville. I'm more speaking about there isn't an explicit explanation around the Pentagon. Not really, not structurally, not. There isn't an explicit explanation around Shanksville. At the towers, we know what size of nuts and bolts got impacted. We know what size of I-beams came down at Building 7. And that's something that is repeatable in science. And that's the scientific method, to be able to repeat something. And we can do that at the towers, which is something that we can't do at the Pentagon. And it would be certainly interesting to look at a finite element analysis of the Pentagon and say, well, why the hell has one engine went all the way through the ceiling? And
yeah, I agree with that.
You know, where's the commensurate amount of damage? So I think I would stick to my point that I think the best and most actionable evidence is around the towers, because that's where the details and the evidence are.
I think that's been true, Jerry. I think historically that's been true. I just remind you, we're approaching the 25th anniversary, and my own view is, as correct as it was to focus on the towers and the hard evidence there, scientific evidence, as we're approaching the 25th anniversary, I think it's not now or never, but it's getting late in the day to expand the investigation into the other areas, and I think we need to begin doing that.
I can't disagree. I can't disagree with you there, but because I think it's what brings people on board to a movement, versus things that internally as a movement we can't agree on, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And but I commend Craig, and I would say Craig. You know, listening to what Craig's saying, it's certainly got me thinking more clearly about the damage.
Oh boy,
again,
I'm going to make some video snips now. I just want to share. I sent something real quick between Craig and talking offline. This is a quote out of New Pearl Harbor Revisited by late David Ray Griffin. That the case against the official story of the Pentagon attack is therefore now about as strong as that against the official counts of flights 11, 175 at the World Trade Center, which is very strong indeed. The truth, and Craig said, hey, the sentence after that is just as important. The 9/11 Truth Community's expose of the falsity of these accounts is now so compelling that it can be disputed only by ignoring this community's evidence and arguments. So, there you go. I'm sure Craig's going to want to talk about that more in a minute, but Ross, go ahead.
Yes, I have a quick question for Karl, who's still on the line here. So, Karl, the first powerful person that you would speculate was the one to direct the orders, or, give the plan for the execution of the events of 9/11. Was that, in your opinion, was that Netanyahu?
Well, I wouldn't really speculate. Who knows whether the as Mick says, there are many entities involved. Certainly, cooperation at the highest levels in the U.S., just as I think certainly from Israel, going back much like in the USS Liberty attack, when it was clearly an intentional act over a period of hours, and at the highest levels in the U.S., it was known it was a cooperative false flag event. So I think the key is just to put together an analysis of the mostly circumstantial evidence that makes the case of who benefited and actually, by process of elimination, only certain entities could have done this, or people with a historical background in those entities. Although I don't see 9/11 as being pulled off by private contractors. Netanyahu certainly would have been in the loop. I mean, maybe we should talk with the film producer Arnon Milken, who kept repeatedly making movies that project the idea decades in advance of aircraft hitting towers, and he's also wrapped into leading us down a confusing path about what happened to JFK, when clearly Israel was the primary beneficiary of JFK's removal. He would have never greenlighted the Six-Day War, which was urgent for Israel. He never would have let them have nukes, and etc. So, the truth of what happened on 9/11 is only understood in a broader context, which I hope at some point we'll all wake up to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross, anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, well, we know that any crime like this or any major action does pass through the lips of one person of power before it begins to be executed. It's not a group of people in unison saying, let's do 9/11. It wasn't that. It was one person that was either nominated or had the idea, a person of power that communicated that idea. I think it's important because I do think we have good evidence that says we can specify a few people. I don't think it was Netanyahu, though.
Ross, actually, I think you might be right, because Netanyahu, there's audio recording or video of him decades ago saying that, I think when America's attacked, they'll attack was it Netanyahu who said they'll attack your biggest, your tallest building, the symbol of the power and the fertility of your nation. That's a recording out there. I'm not sure if it was Netanyahu or another Israeli leader.
Yeah, all right. It's all highly speculative, but yeah. Thank you, Ross. Let's go to Craig.
Yeah, thanks. First, I wanted to say thanks again to Mick, because your comment about, it's getting late for this is exactly how I feel too. I've never agreed with the idea that, well, let's just do with the towers, and then that will down the road will lead in other areas. I mean, hopefully it does, but I think we should be hitting on all cylinders simultaneously. So I agree. I appreciate your. I'm sort of refreshed to hear that from you. I do want to just comment a couple things that Jerry said, and I'm appreciating that Jerry and I are making plans to exchange information and to talk about this further. So I'm happy to have the conversation and the discussion, even if our points of view are not identical. But that's kind of what makes things interesting. But I do want to say I would question the idea of, well, they have wiggle room where the Pentagon is concerned. I'm not sure what wiggle room they have, and so if you want, you're welcome to elaborate on that after I sort of get through this. But so I'm not convinced that there's any more wiggle room when we look at when we look at not only the witnesses but the damage, the impossibility of those two engines not making exit holes in the sea ring. I think that's pretty much as hard evidence as exists anywhere in 9/11, in my opinion. So I would just throw that out. And as for the scientific method, I would argue too that it can be applied to the Pentagon just as readily as it can be applied to the towers. We do have a lot of, well, okay, not in exactly the same way, but just because we're able to look at the mechanisms of destruction where the towers are concerned in a much more detailed way, it doesn't mean that we can't also apply the scientific method to the Pentagon, I guess is kind of what I meant. And the last thing was, you made a reference to having an explicit explicit explanation of something. And I would just refer to my earlier point that I'm more concerned with proving the deception than I am necessarily proving exactly how it was carried out. If we can prove that it's a deception, then that will lead us beyond. And it's not necessarily something that we don't put stuff aside simply because we can't prove every element of how it was done. So I would just stop there.
Fair enough. Let's go to Jerry, and then if you guys don't mind, we're at 2 hours already.
Yeah, I'll be really quick.
Yes.
When I'm talking about the scientific method and applying it to the Pentagon, Craig, what I'm meaning is we don't have structural drawings for the Pentagon to be able, beyond saying it collapsed in the expansion gap in the building, which is where it collapsed, right? We don't have structural drawings. So if you were going to put together a finite element analysis for the Pentagon, you would have to bound the problem and say, okay, it was this hard, it was that soft, and bound it and say, right, between those 2 points, somewhere lies the truth. There isn't that explicit structural drawings, basically, for the Pentagon to be able to do that. And that's unfortunate, because I think that would really help your case in terms of what hit it and what didn't hit it, because I'm now at the point where I don't believe that it was a Boeing that hit it. There just isn't that symmetry of damage from the 2 engines. It just isn't there. Yeah. But it's a contentious point, and hopefully we can make some. I think some of what I've done on the towers and Building 7 could perhaps help you in that, and I hope it does.
Hope so too. Thank you.
We'll go to Chuck. I just realized I didn't even get through the news yet.
That's right.
We have a really quick zip through the news. So let's go to Chuck, and then I got to get back to the news.
Well, and this will be my have a great week, everyone, but I'll just make an observation to Mick that you essentially laid out a conspiracy of deep state agencies within government to coordinate and affect the event of 9/11 across all those different spots, World Trade, Pentagon, so on. And, we all agree we're being lied to, that the official narrative is false, that there's a conspiracy to cover up a crime, which on its face is a crime. So why doesn't the truth movement allege a treasonous act, a treasonous murderous act, and not spin and argue and debate about what really happened? Because I don't think it's incumbent on us in the truth movement to explain the crime. I mean, we can speculate to no end, as we've done for 25 years. But bottom line is, this is treasonous. This is treason. That's what Commander Goya said that in the film. That was his opening remark early on in that Turning Tide event.
Chief Goya.
That's where we need to be. Thanks. Hey, have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, Chuck. Mick?
Yeah, so I think Dave Meischwinkel and others have raised a concern about treason. Treason is a crime, death penalty, serious crime. Treason is a live issue in a case like this. Citizens, to my knowledge, don't have the ability to bring a civil lawsuit based on treason. You could probably bring a civil lawsuit like the families have, except they haven't named U.S. government defendants. If someone brought a similar lawsuit and named the U.S. government defendants, you might be able to get discovery if you had enough evidence coming in, which is always the trick. And you could get past immunity, which is the second trick in litigation against the government. And then if you could use subpoena power to develop that evidence, you might end up proving facts that constitute treason, even though the judge wouldn't be deciding treason as the legal issue. It would probably be something else like RICO or false claims or wrongful death or negligence, something like that. So the treason thing is alive. It would be more alive for a grand jury, and it is alive for the Department of Justice if either of those entities could be allowed to take an independent look at it.
Thank you. All right, a quick zip through the news. They only had a couple really big items. This Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, said am I sharing my screen? Said he's heard of an alleged plot to stage an attack similar to September 11th and falsely blame it on Iran. This is reported by the Iran National, a newspaper in Iran. I'm actually looking at the English translation. That's why we were able to read it. Here you can see this guy, Ali Larijani's post on X. I've heard that the remaining members of Epstein's network have devised a conspiracy to create an incident similar to 9/11 and blame Iran for it. Iran fundamentally opposes such terrorist schemes and has no war with the American people. Got 3 million views so far. So not only did Iran publish this, but also Turkey published this story. 3 different India organizations published this story, and the Palestine Chronicle published it, as well as the Middle East Monitor, which is a UK publishing, also published this. But what did the United States publish? They published, drone expert warns of potential 9/11 style drone attack on U.S. soil from Iran. And it was going to play the whole 3-minute clip, but in the interest of time, I'm not. It's just a whole lot of propaganda, how we need to be aware that Iran could either within the continental United States or out at sea pop some drones up and attack our infrastructure, and that we should bypass the bureaucracy and just allow certain government institutions to go ahead and just fight them. So yeah, let's just give up more civil liberties and checks and balances that we have in place. So amazing. Yeah, the propaganda machine is alive and well. Some of you may have heard, and this went viral across the internet, this tower in Los Angeles, the U.S. Bank Tower, and they've a lot of things going out saying that Larry Silverstein just purchased it. No, he actually purchased it in 2020. But what did happen, and this is a news article from March 2nd, Silverstein Properties secures full floor lease with Wilson Elser at U.S. Bank Tower in Los Angeles. Silverstein Properties, a leading real estate investment development and management firm, today announced, that is on March 2nd, a new 24,000 square foot lease with Wilson Elser at the U.S. Bank, its premier 72-story office tower in downtown L.A. As part of a 10-year lease, Wilson Elser will occupy the entire 31st floor of the U.S. Bank Tower. Goes on to say, U.S. Bank Tower is home to many of the world's leading financial firms, insurance companies, and law firms. Notable tenants include Marsh McLennan. I looked for Cantor Fitzgerald, that did not appear here, though. Silverstein Properties purchased U.S. Bank Tower in 2020, as I said, and completed a wide-ranging capital improvement program to expand amenity offerings, redesign the arrival experience, and upgrade, what's that? Elevators. Oh, If you work in that tower, I would, I don't know, think about working remotely, as somebody said. The only other news story I had was about this film that's being talked about. It's set to release September 11th. Boat Lift. 9/11 wraps filming, screening set for June in Hollywood ahead of the September 11th premiere. What is the movie about? It's inspired by Saved at the Seawall by Jessica Duolong. Boat Lift 9/11 tells the remarkable true story of the spontaneous evacuation that unfolded in New York's waterways in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks. As lower Manhattan was cut off from traditional evacuation routes, an impromptu fleet of ferries, tugboats, fishing vessels, and private boats mobilized to transport hundreds of thousands of stranded people across New York Harbor to safety. So we also said that William Rodriguez is working on a movie, and another lady, I forgot what her name is already, she's working on a movie. So everybody's getting some movies together for September 11th. 9/11 Truth Movement level news. Boston 9/11 Truth is going to have not this Thursday. Sue, if you're on there.
Yep. April 2nd, Jonathan Mark. I'm going to be away.
Yes. Jonathan Mark Haber, he wrote In Plain Sight, a memoir infused with military psychological operations. And he's also, he runs Flyby News website. So April 2nd, 6:30 p.m. if you want to invite SueSerpa@gmail.com. Thank you, Sue. And I just want to revisit, Richard has these really cool 9/11 Truth DVDs in your wallet. Right now he has Calling Out Bravo 7 on it. It's basically a flash drive that you can plug in to computers, hand them out. It's pretty catchy on the street, will get people's interest. And you can not only plug them into your computer, but with a little device, you can plug them also into your phone. So check that out, Calling Bravo 7 on these little credit card size USB media flash drives. And keep your eye out. I'm glad to have Mick here and Richard. Crime Scene to Courtroom, they're working on episode 6. Episodes 1 to 5, you can go to 911c2c.org. And all 5 episodes are up on the website for you to check out as they take you through. And they're going to resubmit this as another item of evidence in the grand jury litigation, which isn't dead. And Mick, I don't know if you could speak any more on that.
Richard might or might not be in a better position. I can't rule out future litigation on it. I do agree that there is every intention to submit all the crime scene to courtroom episodes edited appropriately for a grand jury to the U.S. attorney to give to the grand jury. Whether there's an effort to give them directly to a grand jury is an open question. The law may or may not allow that, something being researched, and whether there's litigation to get a judge to do it is an open question. So, it isn't entirely in the hands of the Lawyers Committee. I think the Lawyers Committee is analyzing and evaluating those options, and they can tell you more about it. I don't know where they stand on it at the moment, but it's a free country. Anybody could do any of those things if they chose to.
Is it true that if anybody takes this evidence to a judge, it could be admissible?
Well, can you give me an example? When you say this evidence, you mean all the exhibits to the petition?
Yeah.
Well, some of those exhibits are more admissible than others.
Okay.
For example, without getting too technical, we did attach the select interviews from the firefighters about sights and sounds of explosions on 9/11, eyewitnesses, ear witnesses. Their testimonies, which were under oath, would probably only be admissible, for example, if the firefighter themselves had either passed on or was unavailable to testify in person. Otherwise, the court might expect that firefighter to show up and testify, and then the testimony would be admissible. The article, let's say Kevin Ryan and Neil Serrett's article on the red grade chips and the nanothermite, that article is probably not admissible per se, but expert testimony from any of the authors about the findings and the work would be admissible.
Mick, an idea, a quick idea exactly on that thought. The idea that even those authors, if they will prepare in an affidavit format their testimony, what they believe provides proof beyond a reasonable doubt of certain truths, that if those affidavits are filed, I don't know if you can just file an affidavit directly to the federal court without a case. I think you can in local or state courts.
You can do it as part of another filing. You have to have a legitimate legal theory to be in court. You have to have a claim. There are different ways to do that. For example, when we tried to get the U.S. attorney to give our initial petition to the grand jury, and it appeared, emphasized the word appeared, that the U.S. attorney had not done that and would not confirm either way, we brought a suit under the Administrative Procedures Act and the Mandamus statute. That's the legal vehicle that got us into court. Then we could attach affidavits to our filings and get them in front of a judge. You would need a vehicle here to get these. I agree with you that affidavits from experts will be admissible until a live hearing, and then the expert would be expected to testify, and that would be what would be admissible. So the question is, what would your legal vehicle be in the moment? There's one other legal option I'll just put on everyone's radar screen in case you all decide to do something before I'm in a position to do it. There is a federal rule that allows depositions, testimony under oath, to be taken before a court reporter, not a judge, in advance of filing a lawsuit if you have reason to believe that the testimony may be lost because the witness is on their deathbed or some other reason, or you're trying to preserve the evidence which may not be preserved as time passes. While you're waiting for some legitimate reason to file your case, maybe the law prevents you because of a waiting period. So anyway, there's a possibility of doing depositions before a lawsuit is filed, but you then don't normally file those until you actually have a lawsuit active.
Right. One other question I had as I was walking, we went for a walk last night, and I found out that my representative a couple blocks away, state representative, and I asked AI how we could use her or ask her to help us in 9/11 Truth, and it said basically anything federal, she can't help you with anything. But I said, okay, well, in Pennsylvania, we have the urban moving systems guys that got pulled over in Pennsylvania. We could ask for those police reports. What I mentioned earlier about the state police officer that says he witnessed a crater several miles before the alleged crash site at Shanksville, and it said, yeah, you could probably ask her to try to get those police reports released. Do you think that's a viable avenue?
Is that a question for me, Dean?
Yeah.
So the attacks of 9/11 were crimes that were federal in nature, but they also involved crimes under state law in Pennsylvania and in Virginia and in D.C. And in New York. Actions could be brought to authorities in any of those states regarding the portion of the crimes that occurred in those states or impacted those states. So there, I mean, you could go to a Pennsylvania grand jury, you could try to, and see if there was any more cooperation from Pennsylvania authorities than we've gotten from federal. You know, time has passed, politics have changed, who knows?
Yeah, we'll be talking more about that offline.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Richard, did you have any other things about the DVD or any comments following up with what Mick said there?
Just that we are going to put all of our products on these cards if there's a good response. 9/11 Blueprint for Truth, Experts Speak Out, 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom. So it's really fun, and it'll you can carry this with you wherever you go. Show people.
Love it. It's a lot of it's about. Forgive me, I'm trying to use the term. The bling. People loved DVDs back in the day. We're kind of getting out of the realm of DVDs now. Just like 8-track tapes, they all had their day, I guess. But now these cards are definitely eye-catching, so that's pretty neat. How's Crime Scene to Courtroom episode 6 going, if I may ask?
Good, slow, and it's not going to be done in early March like I promised last time.
Oh, good.
Hope to get it done in late March.
All right. I know you got bigger things to worry about, so all good. Thank you. All right. If you guys don't mind, and Magnus, I know you had some videos and stuff. I'm sorry, guys, we're not going to go around the room today. It's we're already in 2 hours and 20 minutes in. What do you got, Magnus?
I would say great to see you and great to see you, Mick. I want to say I was here very early on, but I got a new message that I'm waiting for the host and that the meeting started 5 p.m. So I had a real error getting here at the right time, Gene. So it's not the error. It's not a time problem, so I'm sorry for that. And thank you, Mick. I just wanted to add something very quickly. Richard Rotans actually was concerned that Building 7 was a target, and he thought that at the time. And now I have a video of that they are discussing a 5th plane, actually. So I was just wondering, have you talked to Richard Rotans about what he thought about Building 7, that it would be a target?
I have not, Richard.
I don't remember discussing that. That's not to say that it didn't happen. I don't remember everything.
Okay. I have it in the BBC show. I will send it to you, and thank you for the email, Mick Harrison. I will provide it to you that Richard Rotans thought Building 7 would be a target at that time.
Thank you.
I think I remember him saying that they were under the impression there were going to be other flights that could possibly come in. I can't remember because we had 2 conversations with him, but yeah, send that on, Magnus. Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you. Have a great week.
So yeah, we're just going to go around the room if you guys don't mind. Since I got Mick, anything for the group wrapping up?
Yeah, just one last thought, and then if you don't mind, I'll jump off and say goodbye to everybody. Appreciate your patience and your interest. There is some information out there about this concept of a 5th plane, and I think the 5th plane is sort of a misnomer in the sense that there may have been more than a 5th plane involved. There may have been, other planes that may have been intended to be involved. But there is some stuff on the web about the pilots and the crew of a certain plane. I'm not remembering.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.